I spent 5 years learning what control really means. Not the obvious kind, the raised fists, the broken dishes, the neighbors calling 911. No, Derek's control was elegant, surgical, the kind that makes you question whether you're actually being controlled at all, right up until the moment you realize you can't remember the last time you made a decision without his permission. My name is Sarah Chen. I'm 32 years old, and when I finally ran from Seattle to Austin, Texas, I thought I was running toward freedom. I was wrong. I was running toward a reckoning. Derek Whitmore came from tech money, real money, the kind that buys silence and influence and GPS trackers so sophisticated you'd never find them even if you knew where to look. When we met at a fundraiser 7 years ago, he seemed like everything I wanted. Brilliant, ambitious, attentive in ways that felt like love, but were actually reconnaissance. Within 6 months, he'd isolated me from my college friends so smoothly I didn't notice until they'd all stopped calling. Within a year, I'd quit my marketing job because he worried about me overworking. Within 2 years, I couldn't leave the house without accounting for every minute. The tracking device in my car was installed by a company his family owned, professional grade, the kind police departments use. I fled on a Tuesday morning while he was in San Francisco for a board meeting. I took nothing but my grandmother's jewelry, 2 suitcases of clothes, and $15,000 I'd been skimming from grocery money for 18 months. I drove my Honda Civic 22 hours straight to Austin because my college roommate's sister lived there and Derek had never met her. I ditched the car at a used lot, bought a 10-year-old Subaru with cash, and rented a studio apartment under my middle name. For 6 months, I jumped at shadows. I took different routes to the grocery store. I paid for everything in cash. I kept my hair dyed dark brown instead of its natural auburn. I convinced myself I saw Derek's face in every crowded restaurant, every parking garage, every crosswalk downtown. That's how I met Ben Martinez. I ran a red light on 6th Street at 2 in the morning. Not really ran it, more like rolled through it while having a panic attack, because a black Mercedes had been following me for 4 blocks. Ben pulled me over with the calm efficiency of someone who'd seen every kind of breakdown Austin nightlife had to offer. He was 46, a police lieutenant with 20 years on the force, and when he approached my window, he saw immediately that I was terrified, not drunk. He asked if I was safe. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Have you been drinking?" but, "Are you safe?" I started crying so hard I couldn't answer. Ben sat with me in his patrol car for an hour that night. He didn't push, didn't demand explanations, just listened while I told him about Derek in fractured sentences, about the tracking devices and the isolation, and the way Derek could walk into any room and make everyone believe I was the unstable one, the dramatic one, the one who needed to be managed for her own good. Ben took notes. He asked specific questions about Washington state law, about restraining orders, about what documentation I had. When I told him I had nothing, no police reports, no hospital records, no texts because Derek was too smart to leave evidence, Ben didn't look disappointed. He looked like he was calculating angles. He gave me his card that night and told me to call him if I ever felt unsafe. I called him 3 days later when my anxiety got so bad I couldn't leave my apartment. He brought me coffee and sat on my fire escape while I tried to explain what it felt like to be haunted by someone who was theoretically 1,500 miles away. That was the beginning. Ben never pushed for more than I could give. He respected every boundary I set. When I finally agreed to have dinner with him 6 months later, he picked a bright, crowded restaurant on South Congress and asked 3 times if I was comfortable there. We talked about everything except Derek. He told me about his daughter in college, about his job training new officers, about how he'd grown up in El Paso and still couldn't get used to Austin's traffic. I told him about my marketing career, about the campaigns I used to run, about how I was thinking of freelancing again. He made me feel like a person instead of a problem to be solved. We'd been together for 8 months when Derek found me. I don't know how. Maybe he'd been looking all along. Maybe he hired someone. Maybe he just got lucky. The first sign was a note on my windshield. You look happy. That's nice. No signature. Block letters. My hands shook so badly, I dropped my keys twice trying to unlock my apartment door. I called Ben immediately. He came over, photographed the note, filed a report, started having patrol cars swing by my building more frequently, told me this was exactly the kind of escalation that preceded violence. Derek left 3 more notes over 2 weeks, each one more specific. I like your brown hair, but I miss the red. The Subaru suits you better than the Honda did. I'm glad you found someone. He seems nice. That last one appeared on Ben's truck while we were having lunch at a taco place on Burnett Road. Ben's expression didn't change when he found it, but something shifted in his posture. He made phone calls, talked to detective friends, checked with the Washington State Police about outstanding warrants. Derek was clean. Of course he was clean. Men like Derek never left evidence. The stalking escalated. My apartment building's security footage showed someone accessing the garage 3 times in a week. My mail went missing. Someone called my landlord pretending to be a building inspector, asking about my lease terms. Ben moved me into his house without hesitation, a renovated craftsman bungalow in Travis Heights with a security system and a dog named Radar who'd been trained to alert on intruders. I felt safer there, but the paranoia never left. Every car that slowed down outside was Derek. Every shadow in the backyard was Derek. Every phone call from an unknown number was Derek orchestrating his next move. Ben asked me to marry him on a Wednesday evening in April. We were sitting on his back porch, drinking wine, watching Radar chase moths in the yard. He didn't kneel, didn't make a speech, just took my hand and said, "I love you. I want you to feel safe. I want you to know you're not alone anymore. Will you marry me?" I said yes before I could think about whether Derek would somehow ruin this too. Ben slid his grandmother's ring onto my finger, a simple gold band with a small diamond, and kissed me like we had all the time in the world. Derek found out within a week. I don't know if he was monitoring my social media through fake accounts or if he'd bribed someone at the courthouse when we filed for our marriage license. On Friday night, Ben took me to Uchi, an upscale sushi restaurant downtown, to celebrate. We were halfway through dinner, laughing about whether we'd have the wedding at the courthouse or his backyard, when Derek walked through the door. I recognized him immediately, despite the beard he'd grown. Same confident stride, same expensive suit, same way of scanning a room like he owned it. Our eyes met across the restaurant, and I watched his expression shift from triumph to rage when he saw my hand in Ben's. I stopped breathing. Ben noticed my reaction, followed my gaze, and went perfectly still in the way trained officers do when they're assessing a threat. Derek wove through the tables toward us. He was drunk. I could tell by the slight sway in his step, the redness in his face. People turned to watch. A waiter tried to intercept him, but Derek brushed past. He stopped at our table, looming over us, and said my name. Just my name. Like he had the right to it. Like the past year hadn't happened? "Sarah?" His voice was quiet, controlled. "We need to talk." I couldn't speak, couldn't move. All the work I'd done in therapy, all the progress I'd made, evaporated. I was back in Seattle, back in his apartment, back in the paralysis of knowing that whatever I said would be the wrong thing. Ben stood up slowly, placing himself between Derek and me. He didn't raise his voice, didn't touch Derek, just positioned his body as a barrier and said, "You need to leave." Derek laughed, that sharp, dismissive sound I remembered from 1,000 arguments. "And who the fuck are you? Her boyfriend? Her savior?" He leaned closer, voice rising. "You think you know her? You think you can protect her? She's mine. She's always been mine. This is just a phase." The entire restaurant had gone quiet. I could feel dozens of eyes on us. My hands were shaking so badly the silverware rattled against the table. Ben's voice remained level. "Last warning. Walk away." "Or what?" Derek's anger broke through his control. "Or what, you fucking nobody? You think you're special? You think you're better than me?" He turned to look at me over Ben's shoulder. "Sarah, come on, let's go. This has gone on long enough. We can work this out. We always work it out. That's when I found my voice. Small, but mine. No. Derek's face twisted. What did you say? No. Louder now. I'm not going anywhere with you. Leave. Please, just leave. What happened next occurred so fast I almost missed it. Derek lunged forward, trying to reach past Ben to grab my arm. Ben shifted his weight slightly, keeping himself as a barrier. Derek, drunk and furious and used to getting his way, threw a wild punch directly at Ben's face. The sound of fist connecting with jaw echoed through the silent restaurant. Ben's head snapped to the side. Blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. For one terrible second, Derek looked satisfied. Then Ben straightened, wiped the blood from his lip with his thumb, reached into his jacket with the same calm efficiency he'd shown the night we met, produced his badge and held it at eye level. Austin Police Department, you just assaulted an officer. His voice was perfectly steady. You're under arrest for assault on a peace officer and stalking. I watched Derek's face cycle through confusion, disbelief, and finally terror as Ben pulled handcuffs from his belt. Derek tried to step back, but Ben was faster, spinning him around and securing his wrists behind his back with practiced precision. The whole restaurant watched as Ben recited Miranda rights in that same calm tone, as Derek struggled and protested and finally started begging. Wait, I didn't know, I didn't mean. Sarah, tell him this is a misunderstanding. Ben guided Derek toward the restaurant entrance where 2 patrol cars were already pulling up. He must have signaled them somehow. He'd been ready. He'd probably been ready since the first note appeared. Derek was still shouting my name when they loaded him into the squad car, but I couldn't hear him anymore. Couldn't hear anything except my own heartbeat and Ben's voice asking if I was okay. The assault charge stuck. So did the stalking charge once the detective compiled all the notes, the security footage, the documented pattern of harassment across state lines. Derek's lawyers tried to negotiate, but Ben had documented everything, and the prosecutor saw an opportunity to make an example of a wealthy stalker who thought he was untouchable. Derek pled guilty to reduced charges, assault, interstate stalking, violation of protective order, and got 3 years in state prison plus 5 years probation. His family disowned him. His board seat disappeared. The tech blogs picked up the story and destroyed his reputation. Every article mentioned how he'd been arrested for assaulting a police officer in a sushi restaurant while drunk and trying to abduct his ex-girlfriend. The company his grandfather built spent millions on PR damage control and eventually removed Derek's name from all their materials. Ben and I got married 6 months later in his backyard with 30 people and radar wearing a bow tie. My college friends came, all of them, even though I disappeared on them years ago. Ben's daughter was my maid of honor. We didn't post photos online, didn't announce it publicly, just celebrated with people who loved us and kept our happiness private. I started freelancing again, taking on marketing clients remotely. Small projects at first, then bigger ones. Ben encouraged me every step of the way, helped me build a home office, bragged to his cop friends about my campaigns. 2 years after Derek's arrest, I had enough clients to hire an assistant. 3 years later, I opened an actual agency with an office in East Austin. 4 years later, we employed 12 people. Derek served his full sentence. He violated probation twice trying to contact me through intermediaries, which added time. When he got out, he moved back to Seattle and tried to rebuild his reputation. From what I heard through mutual acquaintances, he was working mid-level tech jobs, living in a studio apartment, attending court-ordered therapy. He'd posted a few times on LinkedIn about personal growth and learning from mistakes, but the comments were always disabled. His family still wanted nothing to do with him. I saw him one more time, 5 years after Austin. I was in Seattle for a conference, presenting a keynote about brand recovery and digital marketing. Ben came with me. We made a vacation out of it, stayed at a nice hotel, visited the Pike Place Market, acted like tourists. On our last evening, we were having dinner at a seafood restaurant on the waterfront when I spotted Derek at the bar, alone, drinking beer and watching a baseball game on the TV. He looked smaller somehow, older, tired. He saw me too. I watched recognition flash across his face. For a moment, I thought he might approach us, might try to apologize or justify or manipulate one more time. But he just looked at me, then at Ben, then back at his beer, and stayed exactly where he was. Ben noticed, of course, put his hand over mine on the table, and asked quietly if I wanted to leave. I thought about it. Thought about all the years of fear and paranoia and rebuilding. Thought about the woman I'd been when I ran from Seattle and the woman I was now. Thought about the agency, the marriage, the life I'd built brick by brick in a city that had become home. No, I said, I'm good exactly where I am. We finished our dinner, paid the check, and walked out into the Seattle evening with our arms around each other. I didn't look back, didn't need to. Derek was already part of a past I'd survived, not a present I was living. The tracking devices were gone, the isolation was gone, the fear was gone. In its place was something Derek could never touch, a life I'd chosen, with someone who'd never once tried to control it. Ben still has that first note Derek left. "You look happy, that's nice," framed in his office at the police station, right next to his commendations and family photos. He says it reminds him why the work matters, why showing up for people who feel powerless can change everything, why the system works sometimes when you document everything and wait for the predator to make a mistake. I think about Derek occasionally when new clients ask why I'm so meticulous about contracts and communication and documentation. I tell them it's just good business practice, which is true. But the deeper truth is that I learned from someone who used precision as a weapon that precision can also be a shield. That calm, careful preparation beats rage every time. That the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Building something good with someone who respects you enough to let you build it yourself. Derek taught me what control looks like. Ben taught me what freedom feels like. And Austin taught me that running away isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's the smartest, strategic decision you can make. Sometimes putting 1,500 miles between you and your nightmare is exactly the distance you need to see clearly. To recognize that a life spent looking over your shoulder isn't worth living, but a life spent walking forward with someone who has your back is everything.